What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having an amazing day. Brendan here, talking to you about Kiro, Amazon's new IDE VS Code fork that's competing with Cursor, Windsurf, and all of the other lovely AI-assisted IDEs that we've been using over the last few months, years, whatever. Now, if you're not familiar with Kiro, you may have a hard time downloading it since the demand has been so high. It seems like they're not offering that download anymore, but one of the really awesome things about Kiro, which I'll show you, is that the IDE itself basically has the ability to plan first and then build, right? So traditionally with Cursor, you're jumping into a project, you're feeding it lines through the agentic chat system, trying to get it to, understand what you want it to build, and then kind of going off and going through those processes of generating the code and, traditionally, more of a, ChatGPT-like process where it's sort of going back and forth with you. You're looking at the code. Hopefully you understand what it's doing and can kind of approve and deny and all of these different things. But, more often than not, when I have been vibe coding recently, I've really had to go through an extensive upfront process of pre-planning, creating different MD files to, create structure and logic. And I even have a system in place where, I'll, compile all my thoughts and then I'll, have that then ciphered through an LLM to kind of organize everything. And then I'll have a, prompt that specifically reorganizes those thoughts to kind of adhere to a structure that I'm interested in for the product that I want to build. And then from there, I'll have it create the actual strategy and the roadmap for everything. And then from there, I'll have it generate baseline code and all sorts of different things to kind of help Cursor get started, right? So that has been a process that, kind of chains different LLMs together depending on the use case and whatever it may be. And so now inside of Kiro, you can do all of that natively. Inside here, the spec, plan first, then build, create requirements and designs before coding starts. So I've pre-written a prompt out here for Kiro to utilize as the building blocks for the spec to plan subsequently all of the different MD files that it's supposed to generate for this, contextual engineering process. So I want to make an MCP server that creates a narrative or storyline, then creates a cinematic script and image/storyboard breakdown of that narrative, and then from that image/storyboard/script generates prompts for individual shots that would become a real storyboard. Then I want those images to be generated via Runway API. I want those images then to run through an agentic QC process where an LLM checks them for validity of prompt adherence through semantic prompt image alignment, visual feature comparison, and judgment logic or scoring system. Please build a grip tape AI agent that loops to load the images and prompts, then pulls the latest N images as reference, then calls clip or 𝗷𝗂𝘀𝘁 to check the score and cosine similarity between the original prompt and the new image that's been generated using softmax. Then an LLM, maybe OpenAI for natural language because it's good with natural language, to check against the narrative with zero-shot reasoning, just to generate some, kind of natural language about the image and like what the issues are and maybe some suggestions about how to fix it. And finally, using previous images again, we'll go back to using clip or 𝗷𝗂𝘀𝘁 to provide another cosine similarity score using softmax for the new image to check if it matches the visual style of the previous images. This agent loop will return a true false Boolean if the image passes QC, and if not, it will suggest changes. Anything under a 0.9 score will create a fail, so a false for the matching of the general kind of approval QC process. So here's like what the JSON could look like. Does this image match, what we're going for? False. Score is 0.63 for the original prompt to image adherence. Here are the issues based on the zero-shot reasoning. Style consistency based on the secondary cosine similarity test is 0.71. The average is 0.67, thus it fails. We've got recommended changes, so now it's going to rerun. Now we're using Claude Sonnet 3.7 because right now 4.0 is having a crazy set of influx use, so it's generally failing when we use it. So right now it's making the directory for the specs. Okay, so now that we've made the directory, we're now generating the requirements MD, which is like the very first document that's going to kind of like lay out the whole structure for what we're building here. Cool, so now we have our requirements document. Let's take a look at this. This document outlines requirements from Model Context Protocol Server that automates the creation of a visual narrative through a multi-stage pipeline, yada, yada, yada. This looks pretty good. So I'm not going to read through this whole thing right now, because we're just kind of doing it as a proof of concept. I'll go back through this later, and I'll also attach these MD files to a Google Drive so you can check them yourselves if you're curious. But it's pretty extensive, right? So now, we can move into the next stage, which is the design stage, where it goes and designs based on the requirements, what we're going to do here in this project, and then subsequently it'll create a task list from all of these previous MD files. So now we're going through the design stage, where it's taking your structured idea that it's done inside the requirements phase, and it's creating that design document, based on what we originally gave it. So again, the more information you can provide to it in terms of like the tech stack. So if you want to use some sort of specific SQL database, if that you want to use a specific type of encoder, if that there's a certain transformer model that you want to use, the more information that you can provide to it, obviously the better it will be. There are obviously situations where maybe you want to just kind of like let it make suggestions, but generally speaking, I would try to go in with a little bit of like a predisposed understanding of what it is that you want to build and a little bit of the understanding of what the tech stack is. And cool, so now we've got our design document. So this design document goes through, the different stages, the framework for building our GRIP-tape AI agent, the, computer vision models, the API that we're going to be using for Runway, the model to context protocol. Let's see what it created. So we're just going to go ahead and accept it. Yes, looks great. And now we're going to be jumping into the tasks, where it's going to actually be putting together a task list based on the requirements and the design markdown files that creates what we're going to do. Okay, so now we have our task list, which shows exactly how we're going to go through executing this entire project. So we're just going to go ahead and accept it because, again, this is just a test. And so now basically we can systematically run through these tasks and start to build our project. So let's go ahead and start up our project structure and dependencies. So we're going to start that task. And you're going to be able to continue to go through these different things and start to, vibe code through this process. So it's a much more structured way than what you're used to with Cursor, where you're kind of doing it on your own. And, in a way it's good and bad, because when you're doing it through Cursor, you really are responsible for kind of like thinking through a lot of the logic and stuff, which can be helpful and actually, a little bit more beneficial when you're really trying to like understand certain aspects of it. But this can certainly, especially for people that already know what they're doing, really create a bit of a more streamlined process and potentially get you to the results that you're looking for much faster. So not enough time to get into the agent hooks and other parts of this process. We could have done some of the QCing things through a secondary agent that was set up, which potentially could be beneficial depending on the scale of your project. But for this purpose, I kind of want to see how it handles this. So, we're going to cut the video here now. I just wanted to show you guys the Kiro platform. Obviously super excited about how it's kind of becoming implemented and also how it implements into the back end of AWS and other things like that. Really interesting to see the different IDEs that are coming out, and I hope that you guys can get your hands on this and give it a try. We'll do an update video on sort of where we've gotten to with this particular project that I've started. And then also, again, we've got that great video coming up about GRIP-tape that I'm excited to talk about and compare to, things like LangChain. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.